we weren't taught correctly concerning Achilles and Orestes, and also some information on Ajax, the hero of Salamis. He was a giant of 4 meters, or that's over 13 feet tall. Arrian writes, the ancient Greek writes that when Alexander the Great, that's 330 BC, was in Asia Minor, he went to the tomb of Achilles, where he found the shield of Achilles that weighed 150 kilos. That's like a huge man, and could be lifted by 3 husky men. So the question comes, how did Achilles lift his shield? He was a giant. Let's remember that the Philistines, as is written in the Old Testament, came from the Minoan Empire of Crete, of ancient Greece, and they were huge giants. Goliath and his brothers. They were Philistines. The Philistines were giants. So they were giants in the earth in those days. Some will start saying that we're throwing bricks, but we read the following written by ancient historians. Pausanias, the ancient Greek, writes that the skeletons of Ajaz, another hero of the Trojan War, was washed away by the sea in the area that belonged to Ajaz and was of huge dimensions. Another example is what Herodotus says, that the bones of Orestes that protected Tegea were, after many failed attempts to conquer the city by the Spartans, the oracle of Delphi told them to find and dig up his bones, that they were giants. He was a giant. But of Orestes, if Orestes was a giant, then the Atreides were also giants. Philostratus says of Orestes' bones, Philostratus on Heroes 7.9 to 8.1, they were 7 cubits long. So if you do the multiplication by 64 centimeters, that counts the bar nowadays, when the result is 4.48 meters, that's over 8 feet in height. Now, if the, not 8 feet, wait, let me go. We said 4 meters was 12. So 4.4 is, let's say 4.5, almost 15 feet. Okay? So even if the bar was not around, or around 60 meters in those years, the result does not change that it again is close to 12 to 15, 16 feet in height. Does this mean that the Trojan War and the main heroes were giants? Well, obviously, if their shields and swords were so big. And let's remember that we saw a very huge sword recently from a museum in Japan. And we were all saying, who could have lifted such a sword? Well, obviously, they had giants there as well. Now, going to Ajax of Salamis, another of the Trojan War heroes, a giant 4 meters in height, which means over 12 feet. The issue of Aeantos has not been addressed as it should be. The Salamis hero, Aeantos means Ajax. The Salamis hero was a giant and the subject of the giant. According to the undeniable Pausanias, Ajax knee pads, because they used to wear shin pads and knee pads, and no thigh pads, from what I remember, because I saw the armor of King Philip, the father of Alexander the Great, in the museum in Salonika. One of his legs was shorter than the other because of an injury, but they used to wear shin guards, knee guards, and some kind of a little skirted brass over their, their loins. And of course the thorax and the shoulders, and of course their helmet, and of course they had their shield. So according to Pausanias, Ajax knee pads were exactly the size of a boy's pentathlon disc. That's how huge they were. A boy's disc is about 12 centimeters diameter, while a normal adult patella is about 5 centimeters. So this simple analogy and simple mathematics tells us that Ajax was about 4.3 meters tall, over 12 feet tall. That is why he's referred to as a giant. This excludes the history of the Trojan to happen in the Mycenaean years, because in them did not coexist 4-meter giants that is 12 feet tall people and ordinary people. This was the case in much earlier times in the Paleolithic, but the subject of giants is a taboo subject for archaeology and anthropology. Why is that? I mean, if you have their armor is so huge, obviously they were huge men. So it's now well known that after the burial of Hector, Achilles goes around the walls of Troy saying that the destruction of the city is coming. Apollo, angry under the pretext of Paris, beats him in the heel. He strikes him in the heel, his only mortal part, and that's how Achilles ends. Now, after his death and burial, Ajax asks for Achilles' weapons, rightfully so, since he was his cousin. But due to the wrath of Athena, Agamemnon and Menelaus rejected him and gave them to his favorite fellow villager, king of Ithaca, Ulysses. Ajax becomes furious and in a moment of madness kills his herds and commits suicide with the same sword he'd received from Hector when they face each other in a duel. But the giants do not simply commit suicide. Many myths of our modern folklore, according to which evil giants lived in independent villages, neighboring villages inhabited by normal people, but one day decided to commit suicide because people exploited them and wronged them in transactions. The suicide of Ajax of Telamonius was one of the most popular subjects in ancient painting. It's like harakiri, of the Japanese. I shouldn't laugh. Now, it was a matter of pride and honor. Now, and it took a lot of courage, obviously. And a lot of them were heroes. Now, it continued until the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. His rage also occupied medical conferences and books, while the trial of Teucros, which followed, is proverbially in the history of legal science and ancient law. Unfortunately, it's not taught to law students. Now, Teucros is expelled from his homeland and is thus given the opportunity, as another Ulysses, to wander the seas and establish colonies for the benefit of his beloved island, Salamis, which is just southwest of Piraeus, the port of Athens, in Greece. Now, thus, he founded colonies in Crete, Cyprus, Iberia, northern Italy, etc. Especially in Italy, the subject of Ajax, Ajax Etruscan Ache, is particularly beloved. In the Paestum of Pompeii, for example, the museum is full of fascinating finds of the area dating from the Neolithic era, but the first metopes of the temple by the river tell stories of Greek mythology, with rare images from the Greek archaic era, such as Ajax from the Iliad, to falling on his sword, committing suicide that way. The important thing is the right proportions. Ajax, although folded in two, is as tall as the building next to him. If we assume that a one-story building is about 6 or 7 feet high, then the sculpture correctly depicts Ajax as having a height of over 4 meters. Now, the reason for all this was given to me, says the writer, by a beautiful Etruscan red-figured goblet crater of 400 BC, height of about 40 centimeters. It was for wine from the Vulci, which now exists in the British Museum of London. The vase has been since 1867 from the enigmatic Etruria, a colony of the Trojans, to England, where it was purchased by the British Museum, unknown how, since the purchase and sale of antiquities is prohibited. As for the vase, it has red patterns on a black background with white dots in a well-known Etruscan style. And now in the front of the vase, the scene of Ajax suicide depicted. Naked and bearded, Salamis, heroically wearing a wreath, falls to his knees, and to the left above the sword which comes out of his body from his left shoulder, blood visible around the wound and the handle of the sword, and makes the image shocking. On the left is his shield, above a garment hung on 2 pegs, and on the right there's a large case with white tape, a log from a tree, and a garment also hung on 2 pegs. The scene unfolds in the scene of Ajax. The soil is indicated below, and above is Ajax in a retro-inscribed inscription in white with his name. And on the second side, Ajax depicted being devoured by his hand, while there is again an inscription in Etruscan characters that reads Viata Acteon, meaning Ajax. Many works on the subject of Ajax exist in museum, murals, vases, in seal stones, also a favorite subject of Exekias. Now, Betty Hughes, in her work Beautiful Helen, says that she was worshipped as a pharmacist goddess of opium. Why was the beautiful Helen so coveted, and why so many suitors? Another legend also says that she paraded naked in front of a hundred Danan, that is Spartan lords, Danites. Remember, they were the tribe of Dan. And this I've translated for you from a Greek article. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.